The morning sun broke gently over Beverly Crest, casting a warm gold over storefronts, Range Rovers, and valet stations humming with idle anticipation. At the heart of this manicured glamour sat Prestige Auto Gallery, a luxury car dealership known for two things: impeccable vehicles and even more selective customer service. At 9:07 a.m., a woman stepped through its tinted glass doors. She didn't fit the frame. No jewelry, no designer bag, no blow-dried hair or manicured nails. Just a navy hoodie faded from too many washes, jeans with a soft fray at the knees, and sneakers that had seen more miles than any car in the showroom. She walked in slowly, pausing to take in the lineup of Bentleys, Aston Martins, and the newest BMW 7 Series displayed under precision lighting. Her name was Danielle Monroe, but no one asked. From behind the marble reception desk, Megan Ray, the front desk associate, glanced up, hesitated, then returned to her phone screen. A moment passed, then another. Danielle cleared her throat gently. "Hi, I was wondering if someone could help me take a closer look at that Mercedes over there." Megan looked up again, this time with the kind of eye used for telemarketers and window shoppers. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Danielle replied softly. "I was just in the area and thought, we prefer scheduled consultations for that model. And do you have proof of financing available?" Danielle blinked. "Sorry?" Megan gestured toward the car with a lacquered nail. "That's a $92,000 vehicle. We typically don't do walk-ins unless the customer is pre-qualified." Danielle nodded slowly, as if memorizing the rhythm of those words. "I see." Before she could ask anything further, a tall man in a slim gray suit stepped onto the floor. Trevor Collins, sales manager. His cologne preceded him. Megan waved him over with a whisper, "Just keep an eye." Trevor's eyes scanned Danielle up and down. There was no hostility in his face, just dismissal, clean and practiced. "Ma'am," he said with rehearsed professionalism, "we're a boutique showroom, not open browsing. Is there someone you're meeting?" "No," Danielle replied. "I'm just interested in learning more about your inventory, especially the 2023 AMG. Beautiful design." Trevor's tone tightened. "And you were looking to lease or finance?" "I'm exploring my options." He exchanged a glance with Megan. "Do you have documentation of your income? Employer verification? We typically need to know that before offering test drives." Danielle tilted her head, thoughtful. "Is that a policy on the website?" "No," he said, not missing a beat. "It's an internal standard. Helps us maintain a premium environment." "I see," she murmured again. At that moment, Jason, the security officer stationed near the entrance, began to walk over. Whether someone had called him or he simply picked up the cue, Danielle didn't know. But what she did know, what she felt like cold water running down her spine, was the subtle shift of the air, the pressure of not being wanted. Jason planted himself 2 feet from her. "Everything all right here, sir?" Trevor gave a faint shrug. "We're just trying to understand if the guest is a serious prospect." Danielle turned to Jason. "Do I appear to be a threat?" Jason didn't answer. His hand hovered near his belt radio. "I can leave," she said quietly. Trevor crossed his arms. "That may be best." She nodded, offered a calm smile, and stepped back toward the door. At the exit, she turned once more. "Thank you," she said, "for the clarity." Jason opened the door for her and she walked out, not hurried, not humiliated, but perfectly still. The moment her sneakers touched the sidewalk, she pulled a slim phone from her back pocket, tapped twice and brought it to her ear. "Eric," she said, "Protocol 7, begin prep. I want everyone on the floor at Prestige briefed before noon tomorrow." A pause, then a hint of steel in her voice. "And call legal. I want this entire interaction recorded and archived. We're going to make this a case study for what never happens again." She hung up. Across the street, the sunlight hit the chrome hood of her parked Range Rover SV, hidden earlier in plain sight. Danielle removed the hoodie, revealing a silk blouse underneath. Her reflection stared back at her from the tinted window, not the woman they thought they saw, but the CEO they were about to answer to. At precisely 11:00 a.m. the next day, the front lot of Prestige Auto Gallery shimmered with possibility. A few early clients strolled the polished tiles inside, glasses of cucumber water in hand, as sales associates prepared for another predictable day. And then, the front doors opened again. She entered in heels that echoed confidence, not hesitation. A cream blazer cut perfectly across her shoulders. Diamond studs glinted faintly at her ears. Her hair was smooth, swept up in a polished bun. Her stride, calm, deliberate, and unmistakably authoritative. Danielle Monroe wasn't here to be seen. She was here to be recognized. From behind the reception desk, Megan Ray looked up and froze. For half a second, her mouth parted, uncertain whether to say welcome or can I help, but neither word came out. Her eyes darted to Trevor's office. Trevor stepped out, still holding a half-eaten protein bar, oblivious to the tremor that had settled over the front desk. When he spotted Danielle, his brow furrowed, not in recognition, but in professional curiosity. Then she spoke. "Mr. Trevor Collins," she said with perfect diction, "I believe you remember me from yesterday, though you likely recall me differently dressed." The air in the room tightened like a wire pulled taut. Trevor blinked. I, I'm sorry, have we? Danielle reached into her bag and pulled out a navy folder embossed in gold. On it, Monroe Lux Auto Group. She opened it. "As of 3 weeks ago, I became the majority owner of Prestige Auto Gallery and 7 other locations in the Western District. You may not have known this, but yesterday's encounter was part of a routine ownership audit." Behind her, the glass doors opened once more, and in walked Eric Joe, her executive assistant, flanked by 2 HR directors and a compliance officer with a clipboard already out. Trevor stepped back. "Wait, hold on, this isn't—" Danielle raised a hand. She didn't raise her voice. "Yesterday, I was dismissed without due consideration. Profiled. Treated as though I didn't belong here unless I could prove I was worthy. That isn't a one-time mistake. It's a symptom of a larger culture." Megan fumbled to stand. "Ms. Monroe, I didn't mean to—" "You didn't mean to because you didn't have to think about meaning," Danielle replied softly. "That's the point." Jason, the security guard, now walked in from the far hallway, alerted by the flurry of activity. Danielle turned her gaze toward him. "Mr. Miller, we have you on video trailing me through the showroom, positioning yourself within 2 feet while I stood unarmed and unthreatening. That footage has already been reviewed by our legal team." Jason's face paled. Trevor glanced desperately at the others in the room, then tried again. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. If we'd known who you were—" Danielle stepped forward. "If I had walked in wearing a Rolex with straightened hair and designer pumps, would your team have smiled wider, asked what I'd like to drink? Instead, you questioned my income and called security." She looked over her shoulder at Eric, who gave a subtle nod. "Effective immediately, Megan Ray, Trevor Collins, and Jason Miller are suspended pending full review. You are to leave the premises within the hour." Gasps, stifled but audible, rose from the nearby desks. Sales agents stood frozen behind glass partitions, unable to pretend they hadn't heard. Trevor tried one last time, almost a whisper. "You're ruining reputations." Danielle's eyes didn't waver. "No, Mr. Collins, you ruined your own." She paused, then added, "And you did it thinking no one important was watching." She turned toward the rest of the showroom, staff, customers, even a couple of influencers pretending to browse for social media content. "Let me be clear. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to reset the standard. From this day forward, this showroom will not be a museum for the privileged. It will be a space of dignity for anyone, of any walk, wearing anything." She walked toward the same Mercedes she'd admired the day before. This time, no one stopped her. No one followed. She ran a finger along the sleek chrome trim and smiled quietly to herself. Then over her shoulder, she said one last thing. You don't need a suit to deserve service, and no one should ever be forced to perform well to earn respect. 2 days after the public fallout at Prestige Auto Gallery, Danielle Monroe stood alone in the center of the showroom. Not as a figurehead, as say I'm one, but as an architect. Glass walls glinted with sunlight, yet beneath the gleam, the space felt hollow, like a body waiting for its soul to return. The usual gloss of brochures and leather samples had been cleared from the front desks. In their place sat a single binder titled Dignity First, a New Standard of Service. Danielle opened it gently, reviewing every page one last time. The reform plan wasn't a press stunt. It wasn't about punishment or optics. It was about replacing the silent rules that had gone unquestioned for years. By 10:30 a.m., every staff member from sales to janitorial had arrived. None in suits. That was her first new rule. Come as you are. We're learning how to see people. She stepped forward. Let's begin. No microphone, no grand welcome, only presence. Danielle looked into the eyes of her team, not to intimidate, but to disarm. What happened earlier this week wasn't a scandal. It was a mirror. And most people don't like what they see in mirrors when they've never had to look too closely. The training began with stories, but not from Danielle, it's from guests. One by one, clients who had been ignored, dismissed, or judged in the showroom stepped into the room. Their voices weren't angry, they were calm. That's what made it worse. The calmness. The kind of calm that only comes from familiar disappointment. There was Mrs. Olivia Carter, who had once waited 45 minutes while 4 salespeople avoided eye contact. There was Jalen Ortiz, a 22-year-old college student in sweats, told to come back with a parent. And there was Catherine Lim, a Vietnamese-American fashion buyer who remembered being told, this car might be too sporty for someone like you. None of these guests shouted. They didn't need to. Their stories carried the sharpness of memory and the quiet weight of patterns. Danielle stepped back into the center of the room. Bias doesn't need to shout, she said. It whispers through posture, through delays, through who gets greeted and who gets asked to wait right here. It survives on small things we stop noticing. Then came the structure. She introduced 3 immediate reforms. The first look program. All clients entering the dealership would be greeted within 15 seconds by name, with eye contact, no matter their appearance. Unconscious bias workshops, led by external educators and rooted in real client case studies, including video footage and anonymized staff transcripts. Secret guest audits, monthly anonymous visits from trained evaluators of different races, genders, and economic backgrounds. Performance is tied directly to bonuses. Some staff members fidgeted. A few looked nervous. One quietly excused himself and never returned. Danielle noticed. She let him go. This isn't about shaming you, she said gently. It's about unlearning what you were never supposed to question. As lunch was served, plain box sandwiches, no VIP catering, Danielle sat with junior staff, not executives. She listened more than she spoke. She asked about their lives, their motivations, and the pressures they felt to meet quotas. One saleswoman, Lana, finally asked what many had wondered. Why didn't you just fire everyone and start fresh? Danielle looked at her, calm. Because cleaning house doesn't cleanse culture. You don't fix broken ground by throwing away the building. You rebuild it, layer by layer with your own hands. Outside, cars rolled past on Sunset Boulevard. A Bentley stopped at the red light. A man inside glanced at the showroom, then turned back to his phone. He didn't know the woman inside had just begun to change everything. Danielle stood again. Tomorrow we reopen, not just as a dealership, but as a place that starts over every single time someone walks through that door. And as everyone rose from their seats, unsure whether to clap or simply reflect, Danielle turned quietly to Eric. Now, she whispered, let's find Olivia Carter. For what? He asked. She smiled. To give her the keys. The morning of the relaunch, Prestige Auto Gallery didn't look different from the outside. No giant banners, no velvet ropes, no staged ribbon cutting with local celebrities. That was deliberate. Danielle Monroe didn't believe in spectacles. She believed in quiet reversals. And belongs to Olivia Carter. The showroom was already softly lit when Olivia stepped in. Hesitantly, in a modest navy dress and low heels, she clutched a black purse close to her side like she expected someone to tell her she shouldn't be here. Again. 2 years ago, she had walked through the same doors and was made to wait for nearly an hour while employees whispered, checked their watches, and offered cappuccinos to others who arrived after her. She had left without saying a word, but this time, the moment she stepped in, a young man in a gray sweater greeted her warmly. Mrs. Carter, we've been expecting you. Ms. Monroe will be right out. Olivia blinked. I didn't think she'd actually... Just then, Danielle emerged from the side hallway. Tailored but simple, no designer logos, no flashy jewelry, just presence. And a kind of clarity in her eyes that made people forget the size of the room. Miss Carter, Danielle smiled. Thank you for coming. Olivia's voice trembled. You didn't need to do all this. I never even filed a complaint. Danielle nodded. That's why it matters more. She gestured to the gleaming Lexus RX 500H parked under a soft pendant light in the center of the floor. Clean lines, hybrid engine, pearl white. This, Danielle said, is yours. Olivia blinked. Excuse me? 2 years ago, you were treated like a problem instead of a person. And we can't undo that, but we can acknowledge it and start writing something better. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. Her shoulders trembled, not with drama, but with the weight of having been invisible too long. She stepped toward the car, fingers tracing the door handle, then turned back. Why me? Danielle smiled faintly. Because sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with people who never asked to lead them. You didn't complain. You endured. But your silence wasn't forgotten. Eric, standing nearby, handed Olivia a slim black envelope with the dealership's crest. Inside, a title transfer and a handwritten note from Danielle. As the staff gathered quietly around the showroom, Danielle took a slow breath. This is what luxury looks like now, she said aloud. Not price tags, not Polish, but people being seen without needing to perform worthiness. Behind her, the new showroom plaque had just been installed. Minimalist, silver, no CEO photo, no motto, just 12 words. You do not have to look like wealth to be treated with dignity. From that moment forward, everything changed. Clients arrived without fear of being sized up. Interns were encouraged to speak during meetings. A Somali-born receptionist became the new floor lead. Service scores rose. Sales remained steady. But something more important happened. The showroom stopped selling images and started honoring presence. Later that evening, as the doors locked and the lights dimmed, Danielle lingered near the Lexus. Olivia had already driven off, her taillights like two soft embers fading into dusk. Eric approached. Press is asking for interviews. Want me to start lining them up? Danielle shook her head. No need. We gave someone back their voice today. Let's not ruin it with ours. Outside, the wind stirred gently through the palm trees. Inside, silence remained. Not empty, but full. Of something rare, something earned, something beginning. 6 months later, Prestige Auto Gallery had become something no one predicted. Not a viral moment, not a corporate rebrand, but a movement in plain sight. There were no neon signs declaring change. No press releases blasted across Twitter. Just consistent, quiet correction. In the service bays, mechanics now attended monthly reflection sessions. not on cars, but on how tone of voice shifts when a customer looks unfamiliar. In the sales lounge, a chalkboard wall read, "Tell us one thing today that surprised you in yourself." Most of the notes weren't about cars. And Danielle Monroe, she'd become less of a CEO and more of a witness. She no longer led every meeting. She didn't need to. Her presence lived in the architecture of policy, in the script lines rewritten for kindness, in the break room where new hires now learn empathy before interest rates. One quiet Thursday afternoon, as sunlight laced the windows with gold, Danielle sat at the edge of her office couch, flipping through a folder of performance reports. Eric stepped in, holding an envelope, unmarked, no sender. "Someone dropped this off for you, said you'd know what it meant." Inside was a note, handwritten in deliberate, looping penmanship. "Ms. Monroe, I passed by the showroom today with my grandson. I told him, that place once made me feel invisible." He asked, "Do they still?" I smiled and said, "Not anymore." "Thank you for changing the answer." OC Danielle held the letter in both hands. No applause, no spotlight, just stillness, and the quiet arrival of what she had worked for. That weekend, she returned alone to the same dealership in a hoodie and sneakers, parking her old Ford Focus 3 spots away from the main entrance. She stepped inside, and this time she was greeted with a smile, offered a coffee, asked what brought her in today. They didn't know who she was. They didn't need to, because the point was never to prove power. It was to build a place where power wasn't a prerequisite for respect. The lesson: justice isn't loud. It doesn't always come wrapped in fury or broadcast on news cycles. Sometimes justice shows up in a changed tone, a welcome smile. A second chance was quietly offered to someone who never demanded one. Danielle Monroe didn't seek revenge. She offered a reversal, not to punish, but to correct, not to shame, but to awaken. And in doing so, she taught an entire industry what real luxury means. Dignity is not a reward for how you look. It is the default for who you are. So the next time someone walks into your space looking out of place, remember they might not be testing your service. They might just own the building.